Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rajat Sedana. I am one of the co-founders of e-GMAT and I'm going to be your co-host today. Your main host today is Saqib Hasnan. Saqib is the head of GMAT Quant at e-GMAT and he is our top quant expert. In this webinar, we'll talk about how can you tackle questions in absolute value, linear inequalities, and quadratic inequalities. To support us during this webinar, we also have Ashutosh Mishra, who's a quant expert at e-GMAT, as well as Komal Shah, who's a GMAT strategy expert. This is a fairly application-focused webinar, and even though we start from the basics to a certain degree, we do expect that you guys have a certain foundational knowledge. And to make sure that you do possess that knowledge, we did send a few video lessons your way, the ones that you see in the top left-hand corner. We have these video lessons along with others as a part of our free trial. If you have not gone through these video lessons, I would recommend that post this webinar you do go through them. Just log into your free trial and then you'll be able to see them right away. We also have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on how to create your personalized study plan to get to that 760 score. This is a GMAT strategy webinar, and a lot of people think getting to that 760 score is about covering the syllabus. In this webinar, we talk about how do you plan that 760 score, how do you study for that 760 score, what metrics do you track as you get to that 760 score. And essentially, for most people, in the first 20 days, they can really figure out whether they're studying in the right manner or not if they track certain metrics, and you get to know those metrics over there. Now, getting to a 760 score also requires that you do really well on GMAT Quant. Essentially, a 760 requires you do well in both quant and verbal. And to do well in quant and verbal, you need to have a plan, and this quant workshop gives you that personalized plan. It gives you an assessment of where you currently stand, and then what are the areas that you need to focus on, and correspondingly the amount of time that you need to spend on. It gives you those metrics that are personalized to you. So think of the strategy webinar as something that gives you the principles. The quant workshop is something that applies those principles in the context of GMAT Quant. Again, both these webinars are very heavily attended, so I recommend that you register and save your spot. This is a free webinar. We do, to understand your overall preparation level, we ask a couple of leading questions. One of them is when do you plan to take the test? And the second one is what is your target GMAT score? Okay, in response to the first question, I have about 100 responses, and what I really see is I have one big group that's about for those who have more than 75 days before their test, but other than that, fairly well distributed in each of the four groups over there. So essentially, we have some people who probably are towards the end of their preparation, those who have their test right away or in probably 16 to 30 days. We have those who are in the middle of their preparation, and a few of you who haven't started their preparation most likely. With regards to the target GMAT score, we have a good chunk of you who are aiming for a 760 or higher. We also have the biggest two big groups over here in the 710, 720 bracket, as well as in the 730 to 750 bracket. But overall, more than 85% of the class is aiming for a score of 710 or higher. With that, let me go right into the webinar pane. The screen will have or will be in the process of changing for you. So it usually takes about 15 seconds for the change to propagate within the United States. It takes another 10 to 15 seconds for it to propagate to Europe, and then another 10 to 15 seconds for it to get to parts of Asia Pacific. There's essentially three parts of this webinar. In the first part, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to e-GMAT as a company. That's going to be about 12 minutes. In the second part, Saqib will take over, and that will be the core of this webinar. We'll spend 120 minutes in this part. And then towards the end, if you still have questions that we have not been able to answer, or that are not pertaining to algebra but pertaining to other aspects, we'd be happy to take those questions in this open-ended Q&A part towards the end. So with that, let's kind of talk about, let's move to the introduction to e-GMAT. So early on I asked this question, what's your target GMAT score? And more than 50% were aiming for a score of 730 or higher. In fact, if we split the 710, 720 evenly, I'd say more than 60% of you aim to score a 720 or higher. Now, statistically, pretty much all of you can get to that 720 or higher score, but only 6% of the people get to that score. And the importance of GMAT at top B schools has been going up, as you can really see that more and more B schools are aiming for candidates who score high. The median scores, and this is data from this year, at Wharton, Darden, as well as Columbia have gone up tremendously this year. And then you look at the already high starting point, you can really say even a minuscule improvement is a huge improvement or a huge increase in the context. Now, what do people who get to that 720 or higher score do? A good percentage of them use e-GMAT. Why do I say that? If you look at the two largest forums in the GMAT world, be the GMAT and GMAT Club, what you're going to find is when you look at the number of verified reviews and you look at the number of success stories, e-GMAT has more success stories than the next three top prep companies combined. When you look at verified reviews over the last 3 years, we have almost 1.8x as many verified reviews as Magoosh, Veritas Prep, and Manhattan Prep combined. Similarly, if you look at the number of success stories that have been written over the last 12 months, e-GMAT has been mentioned more frequently than each one of these has been, or all three of them combined. And these are success stories on GMAT Club, Share GMAT Experience Forum, and you guys can go to the links below and verify the same. So what makes our students more likely to succeed than students from other prep courses? I think it's the architecture of the learning that we provide, how we think about helping a student get to that 720, 730, or 740 score. So when you look at the predominant architectures of learning that exist today, there are two architectures that you'd find in literature. One is what we call as the classical book-based approach, which is probably the oldest learning architecture that exists today. And the second is the private tutor-based approach, which again is a fairly old architecture, but not as prevalent as the book-based approach. When you look at most of the other prep companies out there, their courses are centered around that book-based architecture. Even though they have audio-visual lessons, even though they have exercises, the way they are structured or architected is predominantly around how books are architected. Whereas if you look at e-GMAT, you're going to find it's much more like a private tutor-based approach. Let's see why we say that is the case and why one approach is different from the other. And to do that, let's see how you get to that 720 goal. So to get to the score of 720, you first need to figure out how you can get to that, and you first need to figure out what your starting point is. Then, when you define your starting point, you also define what all areas do you need to work on. You then work on those areas, make sure that you know how to apply the concepts that you've learned, and then constantly, while you're learning how to apply the concepts, constantly evaluate yourself to really see whether you've attained that level of mastery that you can say that in this concept, I am amongst the top 6 percentile of test takers in the world or not. When you do all of these, only then you get to that 720 score. So let's see how books approach this problem. When it comes to study plans or defining that path to the goal, books usually don't provide personalized study plans. They may give you a diagnostic, but once you take a diagnostic, a student has to decide his or her own study plan, his or her own path towards the goal. Now, some students really are masters at crafting study plans, others are not. But in the end, students do decide on an approach, whether optimal or not, towards that 720 or higher score. Then when it comes to learning concepts, books provide a very comprehensive medium for learning concepts. The problem really is the burden of validation with regards to whether you've learned a concept properly or not is entirely on you. Now, when it comes to learning how to apply concepts, what books do is supply a bunch of practice questions, but really just as a medium, a book is not very well suited to teach you how to apply concepts. It's very difficult for a book to tell you, do this in step 1, do this in step 2, and do this in step 3, and correct you when you make mistakes. So essentially, people who study using books, they solve a number of questions and let's say hundreds and hundreds of questions, and essentially that's how they hope to master application. And when it comes to the evaluation of mastery, most people who study using books look towards mock tests towards to figure out whether they've mastered a concept enough or not. And then again, the onus of making that decision is completely on the student. For those of you who've studied using books, you experience this. Yes, you get a high when you learn concepts, but beyond that, all the decisions are something that you need to make. A private tutoring based approach works very differently. A good private tutor would work with you. He'd tell you why a certain study plan makes sense for you based on what your starting point is and what your strengths are. Then a good private tutor would teach you concepts, and as he or she is teaching you concepts, a good private tutor would also tell you how to apply those concepts and evaluate those concepts, evaluate your ability to apply those concepts. When it comes to teaching application, that's where a good private tutor would, after teaching a bunch of concepts, teach you how to apply these concepts. So let's say in number properties, after teaching you even, odd, primes, and LCM, GCD, a good private tutor will teach you how to solve problems that combine these three concepts. And it'll tell you what you need to do in step 1, step 2, and step 3. And while teaching you these things, a good private tutor would constantly evaluate you and will have certain decision criteria in his or her mind to really say, now you can go from LCM, GCD to divisibility and remainders and so on and so forth. So what are the key differences between these two approaches? While you learn the same concepts, a private tutor based approach gives you a lot more feedback. It is a lot more personalized. That's, I think, the first core difference. The second core difference is the extent of application that you learn. You learn the same concepts in both, but in the private tutor based approach, the approach ensures that you actually get those concepts and you're able to apply those concepts. So let's see why we say e-GMAT's architecture around this private tutor based approach. So let's take the case of a student who wants to go from a 600 to a 720, and this student. So when you start with us, the first thing that we actually tell you to do is to figure out how would you get to that 720 score. We have an hour-and-a-half long module called Your Study Plan, in which we tell you how should you think about your GMAT preparation, what's important, what should you focus on when thinking about your target score. We also have built tools that give you various paths towards that goal. And if you want to get to that 720, you can have two different extreme paths. One is what I call as a quant-driven study plan, and the other a verbal-driven study plan. Since this is a quant-focused webinar, let's take a quant-driven study plan. So let's take a student who chooses a path of Q50 and a V38. So now that you've chosen that you're going to aim for a Q50 and a V38, we then tell you how would you get to a Q50 and how would you get to a V38. So we've built tools that give you various options that lead you to a Q50 and a V38, and we make you choose these options. We also tell you the principles that you need to keep in mind to make these choices. For example, over here, this particular student, and the principles are simple, frankly, is stronger in arithmetic and hence is aiming for a higher score in arithmetic, and correspondingly feels strongly about sentence correction, much more strongly about sentence correction than he or she feels about reading comprehension. Here's an example of a tool that we built called GMAT Planner. It has a neural network in the back end that allows you to try out all of these permutations and combinations in quant and verbal scores. So now that you've decided how to get to that Q50 and V38, let's kind of personalize your preparation in algebra and arithmetic. So in algebra, we define your starting level, and you already have that target level. So now, when your journey towards 720, your journey for algebra is that 40 percentile to 79 percentile, whereas your journey for arithmetic is from that 55 percentile to the 93rd percentile. So when you think about this, your journey towards that 720 is not a black box in which you're studying and hoping that towards the end you take a mock test and get to that 720. It's a set of 5 neatly defined milestones. In fact, even more milestones than that. If you hit those milestones, you can be very certain that you can get to that 720 score. So that was about study plans. Now let's see how we teach concepts and constantly give you feedback on those concepts. Here's an example of a divisibility and remainders module within our number properties course. What you see over here is audiovisual lessons in the core concepts. You also see a bunch of practice files. You also see the feedback that we provide to students. Here is, and when you look at divisibility and remainders in competitive course, this is from Magoosh, what you really see is it looks like a menu from a book. There is really no feedback. You look at the extent of comprehensiveness, you're going to find very few concepts over here. We start with prime numbers and GCD and LCM over here. Now let's go inside the lessons, and here's the divisibility and remainders concept, in which we teach you what is the foundation concept. We teach you how do you apply that, and we give you practice questions right then and there. So you're able to apply those concepts. And you can really see this is really audio visual with animations in there and with voice and animations beautifully synced. Here's another example of how after you learn the concept, the process, we give you practice problems so that you can see how to apply those concepts. Correspondingly, here's a screenshot from a Magoosh course, and what you really see is this seems a lot more like a book. Let's talk about application. In each module that we offer in number properties, for example, we have 11 modules. We have specific application and specific practice files, and you can really see divisibility application, remainders application, and we teach you what you do in step 1, what you do in step 2, and you get feedback on application. So you get feedback as to how well you've learned how to apply this. Then we have a list of official guide questions where we teach you, where we make you test those skills, and then we give you feedback on those as well. And this is how everything in e-GMAT is architected. So you can really see after every 15 to 30 minutes, you get feedback that is personalized to you. Again, let's look at the Magoosh module, and what you really see is there's really no application over here. There's one practice quiz towards the end that has 5 questions, but that score doesn't appear in the dashboard. It only appears towards the end of the quiz. Again, the intent is not to have that feedback, not to give that feedback to you, but just to provide you with some practice. Again, very similar to what a book does. Now, why is this feedback important? Because your goal is not to study the content. Your goal is to reach a level of competence that helps you get to that 720 score. And unless and until you get feedback, you would not improve at that level of divisibility remainders. And if you don't do that, you won't get to that 79 percentile. Let's talk about evaluation of mastery. Now that you study number properties or word problems or other aspects of arithmetic or algebra, you need to figure out whether you've actually reached that 79 percentile or not. And we have this thing called ability quizzes, in which we tell you your percentile. We also tell you why is it that you are at that particular percentile. And over here, for example, this guy needs to focus on functions, and it needs to focus on core inequalities to improve his or her ability in algebra. So while you're learning the same concepts in both these approaches, the extent of feedback, the extent of evaluation that you get is very different. And you can now see why e-GMAT is architected a lot more like in the private tutor realm rather than a book-based approach. Now, who's created these courses? Some of GMAT Club's top-rated instructors have created these courses, instructors who work full-time on helping you ace the GMAT. So while only 6% of the people score 720 or higher, a good percent of those use e-GMAT. We did start our batch yesterday, both our quant and verbal batches. This is our second session in algebra. In the first session, we looked at the foundations of algebra, linear equations, and so on and so forth. In this, we're going to look at inequalities, and absolute value. You can really see from there on, we move on to geometry next week. Then we do PNC probability. Then we have 2 sessions of number properties, session of word problems, and then we end with the proctored mock test, which again tells you what you've learned well, what you have not learned well, etc., etc. With that, I've come to the end of the first part of this webinar. If you want to stay updated with all things e-GMAT, you can connect with me on my LinkedIn. There are upwards of 9,000 students connected with me on my LinkedIn overall. Let me provide the batch calendar to you as well. As a batch schedule, remember we start a batch every 15 days. How many of those webinars that we offer are free? This is the free webinar that we offer. And then we offer one of the workshops free of charge. Okay, with that, I'm now going to invite Saqib to take over and start with the core of this webinar, which is absolute value and inequality.
Okay, is this better, everyone? Kindly mark yes if this audio is clear now. Okay, great. I can see that now most of you can hear me. Good. So let's get started. Once again, welcome to the second part of the algebra live session. Before starting off with this session, let me tell you what is the purpose of this session. Well, the first thing that we're going to do in this session is discuss the application of the concepts of whatever concept that we are that you are going to study in algebra, like inequalities, absolute inequalities. We're going to see the application of those concepts. We're going to see so I hope that you have gone through the concept file that was shared with you when you registered for this session, because that is the basic expectation that we have with you, that you know those concepts. The second thing that we're going to do is discuss the process of solving questions. So now a lot of you only focus on learning the concepts and hope that you will be able to solve the question. But apart from knowing the concept, it is also very important for you to know how to solve the question. What is the methodical way to solve a particular question? So I'm going to emphasize on that a lot. While doing so, while discussing the questions, I'm also going to tell you what are the key takeaways from each and every question, and also highlight what are the possible gaps in your preparation. Okay. As far as the progression of the session is concerned, we are going to cover the following topics: linear inequalities, quadratic inequalities, absolute value equations, and absolute value inequalities. And we are going to start off with 6 PS questions. Now these are very basic, easy questions. That is why they are known as warm-up questions. And then after completing those, we'll discuss 9 more questions, out of which 6 will be PS and 3 are going to be DS. Since these questions, the warm-up questions, are basic in nature, so I'm just going to give you a high-level feedback on your current conceptual knowledge, and the solutions that have been provided are not very detailed solution, but I'm going to discuss enough to let you know how to solve those questions. So grab your pen and paper and let's get started. What I'm going to do is, out of those 6 questions, warm-up questions, I'm going to give you 3 questions back to back. Once you're done with those 3 questions, then I'm going to discuss the solution of those 3. Okay, so here comes the first one, and I'm going to bring out the poll in just a second. another 10 seconds, then I'm going to show the next question. So those of you who have still solving the question, kindly once you're done marking your answers. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, let me bring up the second question. Here's the second one. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, so kindly put in your responses, those who haven't. Okay. Okay, I've ended the poll. So here comes the third question. I'm ending the poll now. So let me start discussing the first question. Here's the result of the first question. So let me broadcast the result first. So 76% of you marked option B as the correct answer, and some of you ended up marking option A. So those of you who ended up marking option A, most probably you messed up the sign out here. Let me discuss how to solve this question first. So whenever you're solving an inequality, the movement of the variables into the left hand side or the right hand side usually works in the same way as an equation. So what you can simply do is you can simply take -5 to the left hand side and write it as 5y plus 10 is greater than 0. You can take plus 10 to the right hand side and then divide both the sides by 5 to get the answer as -2. So in this case the answer would be option B. So those of you who marked option A, obviously you made a mistake of taking y the other side and marking the wrong answer. Now let me discuss the second question. And let me bring up the poll. In this case, again 76% of you chose option B, which is the correct answer, and I have a few people who think the answer should be A, C or D. Now think about it. You need to find out the range of values of 5, right? And you have been given two inequalities. Now if instead of inequalities, even if you had an equality sign, what would you have done? Tell me, how would you have solved this question if instead of an inequality you had an equality sign? You can type in your answer here. Multiply, eliminate x, right? You need to eliminate x and then add it up. So what you would have done is, to get y, you would have simply multiplied the first equation by 2 to get 2x minus 2y is greater than -6. Here you have plus 2x, here you have minus 2x. You need y, so what you can do is you can simply add these two inequalities to get because of which plus 2x and minus 2x will cancel out, and you will be left with y is greater than -2. Okay, so I hope this is clear, guys. Okay, now let me move on to the next question. Let me bring up your responses. Just one sec. Okay, just one sec, guys. For some reason the third inequality, the third poll is not showing up. Okay, got it. So I had a very mixed response in this case. Some of you think the answer should be B, 32% of you think the answer should be B, 37% of you think the answer should be C, and about 20% of you think the answer should be A. So first of all, tell me one thing. In this question I need to find out non-negative integral values. What is the meaning of non-negative integer values? From where do non-negative integers start? What is the first value? Yes, exactly. That is the main crux out here. Those of you who don't understand this might end up marking the wrong answer. So whenever we talk about positive integers, if you want to write it down, please do so. Positive integers start from 1, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Negative integers start from -1, -2, -3, and so on. However, if you are given non-negative integers, then that means you need to include 0 apart from positive integers. So for non-negative integers, it will start from 0 and it will go from 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. You may even get a non-positive integer. If it's a non-positive integer, in that case you need to start from 0 again, but now you need to move to the left side. So 0, -1, -2, -3, and so on. Okay. So I need to find out non-negative values or integer values of m. To do that, once again, you have plus. This is very easy. You can see there's a minus n, there's a plus n. So all you needed to do was add both the inequalities, cancel n, and you would have ended up getting -4m is greater than -10. Now, what the interesting thing out here is, okay, somebody's asking, isn't 0 neither negative nor positive? Yeah, we cannot actually define 0 to to the positive integers or negative integers. That is why when we talk solely about positive integers, we can start from 1. However, when we say non-negative, we are talking about numbers which are not negative. Okay, and so 0 is one case which will be included in numbers which are not negative. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 are positive. I hope this is clear. Now, in this case, an important thing that you need to understand is whenever you have negative both sides, tell me, can you cancel both the minus sign out here and write it like this? Let me bring up a yes and no poll for you to answer this. One sec. Can I do this step? Tell me. Can I cancel the negative sign from both sides and write 4m is greater than 10? So those of you who are saying no, you're absolutely correct. Those of you who are saying yes, please understand you cannot simply cancel the negative sign whenever you're dealing with inequalities. So when you have negative on both sides, what you really need to do is multiply both sides by -1. Okay, well, to remove the negative sign. However, whenever you multiply both sides by -1, the inequality sign will change. So this is one important step that you need to keep in mind, as you'll always end up making a mistake. So you see, I'm multiplying both sides by -1 to change the sign from negative to positive. However, since I'm multiplying it with a negative number on both sides, what I really need to do is change the sign. If I don't do that, I'll end up marking the wrong answer. So once I change the sign, what I'll get is 4m is less than 10. Then I'll divide by 4 both sides. I'll get 2.5. Since I'm talking about non-negative integers, I'll start from 0 and I'll find all the integers which are less than this, which are 0, 1 and 2. Hence the answer in this case would be option C. So tell me guys, is this perfectly clear? So the main key takeaway from this question is that you need to understand that whenever you're multiplying it with a negative number, the inequality sign will change. This is very important. Okay? Okay, I can see it's clear to all of you. So let me bring up the fourth question. So now I'm going to give you two questions back to back, question 4 and question 5, and then we'll discuss the solution. Let me bring up the poll. Okay, another 10 seconds, then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay. So we'll discuss this once we are done with the fifth question. So here's the fifth question, guys. And here is the poll. Another 10 seconds. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, quite a mixed response in question 5, but before discussing question 5, let's come to question 4. Now, question 4, question 5 are very important questions because most of the questions that you'll get in inequalities, be it absolute or be it simple inequalities, in both these cases, the basic concept that you need to learn has been discussed in question 4 and 5. So make sure those of you do not know how to solve these kind of questions, please understand this really properly, because whatever question that we're going to discuss in this session later on will be based on these concepts. Okay, ideally you should know these if you have gone through the concept files, but I'm going to discuss it as elaborately as possible. Now in this case, I need to find out the range of x, and I've been given this inequality. This is a product of two terms, x minus 2, x minus 3, and I've been given that the product is greater than 0. Now tell me, when I multiply two terms, okay, and I get the result, when I say greater than 0, that means the product is positive, right? So when is the product positive? When two terms are multiplied. In which cases do we get a positive result when two numbers are multiplied? Can you tell me something about their sign? Yes, that's absolutely correct. So when two numbers are multiplied or two terms are multiplied, when both of them have the same sign, so either both of them are positive or both of them are negative, then only do we get greater than 0. Okay, so using this inference, we can come up with two different scenarios. One is when both of them are positive, and the other is when both of them are negative. Now when both of them are positive, I can write x minus 2 is greater than 0 and x minus 3 is greater than 0. Both of them are greater than 0 because they are positive. So, and from this I'll get x is greater than 2, x is greater than 3. So obviously I need to combine both these, and from this I can say that x is greater than 3. Okay. When both of them are negative, I can say that x minus 2 is less than 0, x minus 3 is less than 0 because they are negative. Solving this, we'll get x is less than 2, x is less than 3, and once we combine this, we'll get x is less than 2. Now whenever we get an equation like inequality like this, where x is greater than 3 and nothing else is mentioned, then that basically means that it is extending from 3 till infinity. So I can say that from this part I get x is moving from 3 to infinity, and when I have x is less than 2 and nothing else is mentioned, then that basically means it is less than 2 and it is going on till negative infinity. So we can conclude that all the values which lies between minus 2 to infinity and which lies between 3 to infinity will satisfy this inequality. Is this clear, guys? Kindly mark yes if this is clear. If you have any doubts, please ask. I'm going to show you another method. Somebody is writing about wavy line. I'm going to talk about wavy line also. So if you have any questions, please ask in the Q&A pod. So this is fairly straightforward. And I'm going to show you another method. So I can see some of you are still, 4 of you are saying no. So if there's any doubt, please ask in the Q&A pod. Ashutosh, who is supporting the session, is going to help you with answering the queries. Okay, somebody is saying, can you explain the negative part? Okay, so whenever, as far as the negative part is concerned, please understand, I'm getting, when I'm saying x minus 2 and x minus 3 are negative, then that simply means that both of them have to be less than 0, otherwise they will not be negative, right? So I can say these product x minus 2, x minus 3, these individual terms can be less than 0. So now it is expected that you know how to solve this, right? So if x minus 2 is less than 0, then that means x is less than 2, and x minus 3 is less than 0, that means x is less than 3. Now think, I'm looking for a common value between these two, which will make sure that both of them are negative. Keep this in mind, both of them should be negative. Now you might ask, why am I not taking x is less than 3? You might be wondering, right? If that is the case, think about it. If you say x is less than 3 and you put, say for example, 2.9, for example, put 2.9 in this and 2.9 in this, will both of them be negative? It won't be, right? You're saying x is less than 3. So obviously 2.9 could be one of the values. But when I put 2.9 here, what happens is this becomes positive, this becomes negative. So I need to choose the common value between x is less than 2 and x is less than 3, which will help me make sure that both of them are negative. And the common value is all those values which are less than 2. So you can take 1.9, you can take 1.8, you can take 0, take whatever you want to. In all these cases, both of them will be, when you multiply both of them, you'll get the product as positive. Now somebody is asking, what if one of them is positive, one of them is negative? You need to solve it in the same way. It does not matter. The only thing will happen is that you need to consider a number of cases. All the cases when this could be positive, this could be negative, this could be negative, this could be positive. However, do not go into that. This is just one basic way to solve the question. I'm going to show you the other method which is way better than this. And if you can understand the second method, we can solve most of the questions of these type very quickly. So the second method that I'm going to talk about is known as Wavy line method. Okay. Now in this, what we do is we try to plot the range on a number line. Okay. So the first step to do that is to find out the 0 points. Now what do I mean by 0 points? You need to take each term and equate it to 0. Okay. So when you take x minus 2, you take x minus 2 and equate it to 0. What will you get? X is equal to 2, right? You take x minus 3 is equal to 0. What will you get? X equal to 3. So you will get these 2 points, x equal to 2, x equal to 3, and you plot that on a number line. Okay. So what this does is, this divides the whole number line into 3 regions, as you can see. Okay. This is region 1, this is region 2, and this is region 3. Now what I'm going to do now is try and see in which of these 3 regions is the product of x minus 2 and x minus 3 always greater than 0. Okay, this is the simple thing that you need to do. And how are you going to do it? Well, the steps are very simple. Think about it in this way. There are 3 regions, right? So focus on this region first. This region where this is x is greater than 3. Look at this region. Now when x is greater than 3, you can take any value. It's up to you. Choose any value that you're comfortable with. Say for example, choose x equal to 5. Okay, because x equal to 5 lies in this range. Now put x equal to 5 in x minus 2 and x minus 3. If you put 5 here, 5 minus 2 is positive. If you put 5 here, 5 minus 3 is also positive, right? Now if both of them are positive, their product will be positive. So what you can do is you can infer, okay, in this region I took one random number, you can take any other, it does not matter, and I'm getting positive. That means for all values which are greater than 3, the product of these two will be greater than 0. Okay. Now I know people draw a parabola. I'm trying to simplify it a bit. You don't need to really draw the parabola. Okay. If you can simply write positive, negative, positive also on this number line, you have your answer. Okay. So I hope this part is clear. You get positive. Now think about the region between 2 and 3. Between 2 and 3, take any value. Take any decimal, because there aren't any integers here. But you can say take 2.5. Okay. If you take 2.5, you will see that this will become positive. However, this will be negative because 2.5 minus 3 is minus 0.5. So that means any value between 2 and 3 will, because any value that you take and put in this expression, you'll always get less than 0. Right? Negative value. The product will be negative. But you don't want that, right? You're looking for the ranges of x, which will give you greater than 0. Keep this in mind. Now look at the last part, the third region, which is all the values which are less than 2. Now the simplest way what I do is I simply put 0 less than 2. You can put 0 out here. If you put 0 in both of these, or you can take any number. You can take even 1. I'm just taking just random number. You can take even 1 or 0, whatever. Put here. You will see that both of them will be negative. Right? Both of them will be negative, which means that their product will be positive. Okay? And since the product will be positive, that means any value which is less than 2, will always be positive, which will give you the product of this will always be greater than 0. Now you can draw a parabola if you want to. Even if you don't, you already know positive, negative, positive. You can see that you need values which are greater than 0. So you can say, okay, my range would be x is greater than 3 and x is less than -2 till infinity. So I'm going to repeat these steps once again very quickly. The first step is to find out these 0 points, which you can do by equating each expression, each term in this to 0. Once you get those points, plot it on the number line and find out the positive, negative nature of the expression in each of these regions. Once you get the expression, the positive, negative nature, you'll know what your range is. Okay? Now, kindly mark yes if this is clear. And let me ask you a question. Instead of, say for example in this, instead of greater than 0, if this would have been less than 0, for example, suppose if you were given less than 0, what would have been your answer? You can type in your answer in the answer presenter's question. What would have been your answer? Yes, absolutely. So because you need negative, less than 0 means negative, you look at your wavy line, you look at this, you see that it's between 2 and 3, so your answer would be A. Okay, so I can see it's clear to most of you. If there's still any doubts, guys, please ask in the Q&A pod. Ashutosh will help you with your queries. Okay, now let me come to the fifth question. Now, I forgot to broadcast the result. About 65% of you got the correct answer, and those of you who weren't very, I'm sure those of you are not aware of the wavy line method. I think that is the reason you ended up marking A. But now I hope you understand how to solve these questions. Now let me very quickly to come to question number 5. In this I have again, I was sure it's quite apparent and that the confusion was between C and D, and the confusion is mostly because of the fact that if you're not comfortable with wavy line method, you might end up marking the wrong answer. Now in this case again, I need to find out the range of values of x. However, the only difference in this case is instead of x minus 3 into x plus 4, I have x minus 3 by x plus 4. Now you can see the question on the slide. Answer the question. Can I multiply x plus 4 to both sides of the inequality? Can I do that? Kindly mark yes if you think that I can multiply x plus 4 easily. Okay, I want a few more responses, guys. Please participate. Okay, it's almost an equal split. Well, guys, I would really strongly recommend you to go through the inequalities concept file. In this case, you cannot do this. Please understand, this is not an equality sign where you can simply multiply with the variables both sides. And you need to take your learnings from the second or the third question that we discussed in the warm-up, where I told you that whenever there's a negative sign, when you multiply -1 both sides, I hope you remember I told you need to change the sign of the inequality, right? It's only when you're multiplying both sides by a positive number you don't change the sign. There's something which I told you. In this case, tell me once again, do I know the sign of x plus 4? Do I know whether x plus 4 is positive? Do I know x plus 4 is positive? I don't know that, right? Since I don't know whether x plus 4 is positive or negative, because the x plus 4, so the value of x could be very well -6, right? If the value of x is -6, then you might get -2. So x plus 4 would become negative. However, if the value of x is say 1, x plus 4 will be positive. Since you don't know the exact value of x, it is not advisable, and it's not, you shouldn't multiply both sides if you don't know the sign of the term which you're multiplying with. That's the really important takeaway that you need to keep in mind. So please write it down if you're not aware of it. We will not multiply with x plus 4 both sides. However, since I'm looking for x is less than 0, can anyone tell me when I have a fraction, say a by b, and the fraction is less than 0, in what ways can I get a negative value in terms of numerator and denominator? The sign of the numerator and denominator. Different signs, right? Now the numerator could be negative, the denominator could be a positive, or vice versa, right? However, instead of going into that confusion in complexity and trying to solve in taking both these cases, we can simplify it by multiplying both sides by x plus 4 whole square. Now, kindly mark yes if you understand this. I am going to explain it and think a bit. Why am I multiplying with x plus 4 whole square? You might wonder, why am I doing this? I just told you that I don't know the value of x. See, understand, a whole square, a perfect square is either positive or 0. Okay, but it will never be negative, right? Whatever be the value of x, if x is 0, 4 square is positive. If x is minus 6, even then this is positive. So the best way to remove the denominator is to multiply with either a whole square or to the power of 4, which will help you eliminate the denominator. So when I multiply x plus 4 whole square both sides, what will happen is x plus 4 in the denominator and x plus 4 in the numerator, one of them will get cancelled. And I don't need to change the sign also because I was multiplying with a positive entity. Okay, so there are two things that you learned from this question. One is, if you don't know the value of the variable, do not multiply blindly both sides. Even if you want to multiply and remove the denominator, the best way to do it is to multiply it with the same term with a whole square or an even power. If you do that, it's a positive sign, so you don't need to worry about changing the sign of the inequality. Okay, now I have this expression. I've already taught you how to solve this using a wavy line method. You just need to plot the 0 points. In this case, it would be minus 4 and 3, and use the logic that I've taught you to find out the range of positive, negative, positive. Okay. Once I do that, what I'll get is I need to find out less than 0, which means I'm looking for minus 4 to 3, and hence the answer in this case would be option C. Oops, D. Okay, guys, please mark here if this is perfectly clear. Even if you multiply by 1, how will that help me? I need to eliminate x plus 4, right? So if you write x plus 4 by x plus 4, what will you get? You'll end up with the same thing. Think about it. X minus 3 by x plus 4 into x plus 4 by x plus 4. It's the same thing, right? So the answer is D. This is the answer. This one. Kindly mark here if this is clear. I can see still 2 or 3 are saying the answer is no. See, you're saying, couldn't I simply point that x minus 3 or x minus 4 is negative? How do you know that? Do you know which one is negative, which one is positive? See, think about it. When x is 0, so if I say x is 0, in this case the numerator is negative, the denominator is positive, right? But there could be values where it could be totally different. I cannot really say which one should I take as negative. So to avoid that confusion into thinking about the numerator in terms of numerator and denominator, it is best to solve it by multiplying it with the positive sign whole square. Okay. Now let's move on to the next question, guys. This is the last warm-up question. And let me bring up the poll. Once again, if you have any queries, please post it in the Q&A pod. I'll answer a few of them and Ashutosh will take a few queries. See, plugging in numbers is not a very recommended way. It takes a lot of time, and I know when I'm explaining, it might seem a lot of things that you need to do, but it's just a two-step process. You multiply it, you plot the wavy line, you get your answer. When you're plugging in numbers, how many numbers are going to plug to ensure that you have got the correct answer? Yes, in the region minus 4 to 3 it is negative, but that is what we needed to find, right? I'm just going for one sec to the back of the slide. Guys, please understand, once you get your wavy line, once you find out the positive, negative, for positive, it is not always necessary to look for only positive. You need to find out when will this expression be less than 0. So in this case you need to find out less than 0, you need to find out negative. That is why we've chose this range, because this is the only place where this expression will be negative. Okay. Okay. Okay, another 10 seconds, then I'll end the poll, and then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So about 77% of you think the answer should be C, and I have a few about 10% each in A and D. Well, this is another last type of question which you need to understand how to solve, because most of the questions that we're going to discuss now will be based on 5, 4, 5 and 6. Now in this case I have an absolute sign, a modulus sign, right? And I need to find out which of the following inequalities is equivalent to this. So I need to find out when is mod of x plus 3 less than or equal to 0. Okay, this is what is the meaning of this expression. When is mod of x plus 3 less than or equal to 5? Now, there are two ways again to solve this. I'm going to first of all explain the most basic one. To solve this question, what you can do is you can simply substitute x plus 3 by z, okay, and write the expression as mod of z is less than or equal to 5. Okay, the value of z should be less than or equal to 5. Now tell me, what are the possible values of z? Can z be 6? Can z be minus 6? No, right? If it is less than 5, it has to be between minus 5 to plus 5. So if I can visualize on the number line and saying mod of z means I need all the values starting from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll go to 0 and then again minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5. Okay. Now the another interpretation of this is, and again some people find it difficult to visualize this, but whenever you see just a simple modulus sign and you see something is less than or equal to 5, you can think in terms of distance from the origin or distance from 0. So what that means is there's nothing inside mod except a variable. Okay, there you don't have a plus 3 or a minus 3. So you'll start from 0. You start from 0 and think about it that you from 0 you need to go to a distance of 5. Less than or equal to 5, you cannot go beyond 5. So you start thinking in terms of distance and say, okay, from 0 I need to go to 5. I can, since there's a modulus sign, I can go to the other side also, and hence the range would be minus 5 to plus 5. Now once I have this, I can put back the value of x plus Is this clear, guys? Apologies for the inconvenience. My computer laptop just froze. I hope now I'm audible. Okay, let me do a really quick check. Okay, I can see that most of you are saying yes, that's good. So I hope this is clear. So what I'm basically doing is I'm adding -3 both sides, okay, and I'm getting the range of x, which is -8 to 2. Now visualize the same thing, this range in the same way. So you have my x plus 3. Now what is your 0 point in case of x plus 3? It's -3, right? If you equate x plus 3 equal to 0, you'll get x equal to -3. Now from -3, you need to move to a distance of 5. Now if you want to move to a distance of 5, what will you get? So basically I'm shifting this 0 and taking it to -3. Think about it in this way. I'm taking this 0 and I'm putting it here. I'm taking it here. So if I take this here, everything will shift from 5 will come to 2. So a lot of time what I suggest students is so this is one way of doing it. You can substitute the value and then solve it. However, if you can think in terms of distance, what you can do is you can simply say, okay, the 0 point in this case is -3. I need to find the distance that is less than equal to 5 from -3. Okay, so you can simply draw a number line by saying, okay, I have -3. Let me move +5 in this direction. So -3 plus 5 gives you +2. So your range on the right hand side will be +2. If you move this side, you need to go again 5 units to the left. And if you want to do that, these are negative values. So you'll go 5 distance and come to -8. Okay, and this is what I usually recommend. It's very easy. It's very simple. All you need to do is think in two ways. One is what is the 0 point? Draw the 0 point. Look at the right hand side, and that would tell you the distance that you need to look at. Okay, I hope it's clear, guys. With this, all I want to say is that so there is a question of a greater than equal to 5 which will come up. Then I'm going to discuss that. Don't worry, I have questions of all types. So with this, I've come to the end of the warm-up questions. What I really want to say is that and the feedback that I want to give is that about 70% of you in the batch are doing well, but I can see there's still some basic conceptual lack of conceptual clarity in terms of when to multiply with -1, when to change the signs. So I would highly recommend you to go through the concept files. We have already shared with you. These are in the free free concept files. You can log into e-GMAT.com and go through them. I'll share the PDF also at the end of the session. This is one of the articles of Wavy method that have been written by one of our subject matter experts. I would strongly recommend you to go through this also if you are still not comfortable with Wavy line. With this, let's move on to GMAT-like questions. These are 607 level questions. Whatever we have discussed so far were really basic conceptual questions. Now you're going to get some slightly difficult ones. Okay, so here's the first one. Now from now on, all the questions that you'll get will have 5 options instead of 4. I'll bring up the poll in just one sec. The audio is not lost, don't worry. I've just muted myself. Guys, you've already solved a question like this, so please respond. About 100 people in this session and only I have just about 50 responses. I'll give you another 10 seconds, then I'll discuss the solution. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, let me broadcast the result, and the winner in this case is C, though I have a few B, D and E, and I am not sure why are people making mistake in this question. This is almost similar to the one that we discussed, the first question that we discussed in the warm-up question. In this case, I need to find out the range of x. Okay, and as I've already told you, you can simply take 48x or 16x either to the left hand side or right hand side and solve the question. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'll simply rearrange the terms. I'll take 48x to the other side and bring 32 to the right hand side. Okay, I told you in the first question you can do this. It's almost similar to how you solve in the case of an equation also. Okay, once I have this, I know that I'll get minus 32x is greater than 64, and once again, if you forget to change the sign, you will end up making a mistake. So since you want to get the range of x and not minus x, you need to multiply both sides by -1 and change the sign. If you don't do it, you'll end up writing something like this, and you'll get your answer as x is greater than -2, and you'll mark the wrong answer, which I can see. Thankfully, not a lot of you marked A, but I still have about 7% of you, 5 of you marking this answer, because once again you forgot to change the sign. So I cannot emphasize a lot. I want to emphasize as much as possible that please make sure that you don't mess up because of this. Half of the mistakes I've seen people make is because they forget to change the sign or forget to multiply. So once you do this, once you multiply by -1, you need to change the sign and then divide by 32 to get the answer as x is less than -2. Once you have x is less than -2, you'll get your answer as option C. Those of you who marked D, you made a silly mistake, and I'm still not sure why a few of you ended up marking option E. Can you let me know why you ended up marking option E? Because option E is kind of weird. Did you simply think, okay, I don't have just x less than -2, so let me mark option E? Did you do that? Or was it something else? You can type in your responses, those of you marked option E. Or you just guessed, you weren't sure what the answer would be. Yes. Thanks for asking this question, but yes, as you can see, a lot of people still ended up making a mistake. The accuracy level of this question is 67% in this session. Think about it when you have a larger pool of students. Okay, so infinity is something you need to get comfortable with, and it's an easy concept. You don't need to worry about it. There's nothing difficult about it. Just think about it in this way: less than -2, no other constraints given in the question, so that means it will extend till minus infinity. As simple as that. You need to make that conclusion. If you made a mistake, it's okay, but please make a note of it. Okay. So once again, I'm emphasizing on the fact, make sure you change the sign, make sure you understand the concept of plus infinity and minus infinity. So here comes the next question, guys. Let me clear the answer poll. Let's get started. Another 10 seconds, then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Let me show you the result. I have a very interesting result, something which I usually get almost every time I ask this question. So, about 40% of you think the answer should be A, and about 45% of you think the answer should be B. Okay. Now, those of you, especially those of you who marked option A, can you read the question again and tell me, is there any constraint on X? This is the question. What kind of a number is X? X is an integer. If you miss this part, that means you have done all the hard work, but you have still ended up marking the wrong answer. I hope it's clear why the answer cannot be A. It is really important for you to write all this stuff. So the first thing is, always write down if there's any constraint or not. Okay? It's okay. The reason I'm giving these questions is because it's okay that you make the mistake now than to make it in the exam. So this is one of the takeaways. I know people make these mistakes in a hurry because you are in the mode of solving questions. You simply jumped into the inequality, found the values and marked the answer without looking at the constraint, because so far we didn't discuss any question where there were so many constraints or any constraint. So once you understand this, that X is an integer, what you need to do is you need to solve both the inequalities. This is something which we solved in the previous question, so I'm not going to solve it again. So I just need to focus on the second inequality, which would give me X is greater than or equal to -5. Okay. Now what I need to do is I need to combine these two. X is less than -2 and X is greater than -5, and draw the number line. Once I draw this, I can say that, okay, I'm looking for integers which should be less than 2, which should be greater than this. So the values which are possible are -5, -4 and -3. Okay. And since I'm looking again, so those of you who ended up marking -2, -2 or -3, you did not focus on the word minimum. I'm looking for the minimum value. Now some of you also, I've seen this in a lot of cases where student think that -5 cannot be the minimum value, -3 should be. That is not the case. Please don't end up doing this. It's not a positive value. 5 is greater than 3. But -5 is less than -3, and hence those of you marked D and E made a silly mistake, and the correct answer in this case is B. So always two things: pay attention to the constraints. In this case, it's an integer minimum value, and obviously you need to make sure that you write all these steps. Draw the number line if required, so that you don't make any silly mistakes. Okay. I hope it's clear to everyone. Just a request, don't worry about the level of questions, okay, whether it's a 700 level or 600. Most of them will lie between 600 to 700. It's very difficult to just simply say, yeah, it's a 700, but it's between this. To put it in this easy way to say, it's a medium difficult question. It's not a difficult question. It lies somewhere in between, because the concept used is simple. The only reason because it becomes difficult is because of these constraints. Okay. Yes, I'll be showing you a few 700 plus level questions also, don't worry about it. Here comes the third question. Okay guys, another 10 seconds. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, this may seem difficult, but it is not. I'll discuss the solution. Let me broadcast the result. Though the result will obviously show that it is difficult. So about 40% of you, in 41% in fact roughly, think the answer should be A. And I have about 21% who think the answer should be D, of 18-12% between B and C. Okay. Let me ask you a question before discussing the solution. Look at Z square. Okay, just focus on Z square and tell me, can Z square be negative? Yes, no. It cannot be negative, right? So if it cannot be negative, can you have a range where you include -3, -2, or a minus infinity, or a minus root 2? Think about it. Those of you especially who marked the answer as A, C and E. In fact, 40%, 41% as I told you of you answered the answer as A. So I hope it's clear why these cannot be your answer. You just cannot solve the question blindly. The inequality was easy. All you had to do was find the 0 points. The good part was, the easy part was, you're looking for Z square, not Z. So those of you who are marking root or minus root 2, they ended up thinking about Z and not Z square. So that's the first thing that you need to keep in mind. Okay. Now as far as the Wavy line is concerned, you have the inequality. You have just one constraint, as I discussed now, that it cannot be negative. It can either be 0 or positive. Okay. So what you can do is, to simplify your life, you can think in this way, that okay, Z square can either be 0 or Z square can be positive, which means even if it's 0, this portion Z square plus 4 will always be positive. Yes or no? Let me bring up the yes and no poll. I don't know where it went. Yeah, just one sec. Let me clear it. See, these are small things that you need to be very clear about. Okay. So Z square plus 4 will always be positive. It does not matter what is the value of Z square. Now, if this is positive and I have the product of these two as negative, can you infer? What can you infer? In fact, what can you infer about Z square minus 2? What can you infer about Z square minus 2? Negative, right? It's a simple conclusion. The product is negative. I know one of them is positive, so obviously the second one has to be negative. Now if this is negative, then that means Z square minus 2 is less than 0, or Z square is less than 2. Now if Z square is less than 2, you know this constraint that it has to be non-negative. That means it will be greater than or equal to 0. You could have even used the Wavy line method by plotting -4 and 2. This is another way to do it. If you draw a Wavy line method, you'll simply get this. Okay. Now those of you who made a mistake by using Wavy line method, you did not apply the constraint that Z square is 0 or positive. If you would have remembered that constraint, you would have ended up marking the correct answer. Okay, that's a good question somebody is asking. So shouldn't it be mentioned that Z is a real number? Otherwise, in case of imaginary number, answer will change. Now please understand that GMAT will never test you on imaginary numbers. There will be no questions at all which will be based on imaginary numbers. So if nothing is mentioned in the question, whatever be the question, be it of algebra, word problem, number property, doesn't matter. You'll always be dealing with real numbers. That's actually universal for any GMAT question. So if you thought about this, that's a good thing. Now those of you why, okay, the answer, so that's the same reason. Think about it. Can you have minus infinity? When you're saying it's minus infinity, you're saying the values can be minus infinity, minus 100, minus 200, minus 1, minus 2. It's the same thing. You are actually saying that Z can be less than 2 and it can go down to any negative values. Is this clear why it cannot be C now? Those of you who ended up marking B, you just made a very silly mistake. You forgot to look at the sign, nothing else. You should have noticed it carefully. If you would have done that, you would have realized, okay, both of them cannot have the equal to sign, only one of them will have it, and hence the answer will be D. So I hope it's clear. I see the question was easy. The only thing that I had to do was draw the wavy line. Drawing the wavy line wasn't tough. Almost from the responses I can see, almost 50 to 60% of you could come up with this range. The only place that you are now making a mistake is when it comes to applying the constraints, thinking in terms of positive numbers, positive infinity, negative infinity. Once you start thinking in these terms, these questions are not difficult. It will hardly take you 1 minute or 1.5 minutes to solve it. Okay. So I hope it's clear. If there's any doubts, please ask in the Q&A pod. Okay. Did I miss something? I think there's one question which I missed. Did I? Yeah. Okay, here's the fourth question, guys. It's similar to the third one with just one minor change. Let me bring up the poll. So if you have understood the previous question, you should be able to solve this one. Another 10 seconds. Since we have already solved this, I'm not going to give you a lot of time. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Guys, I really want to know, why are you still making mistakes? So tell me, what was the range? The majority of you got the answer correct, but I still want to know, we discussed this question, right? What was the range that we got for z square? Can anyone type in the answer? What was the range that we got? I'm really sorry, this was closed. So I've opened the poll. What was the range? It was less than 2, right? It was less than 2 and greater than or equal to 0. Think about it. I'm talking about z square, so you cannot make the mistake of taking z. This is just a constraint telling you about z. It's just telling you z is an integer. When I'm saying this, this helps me infer that if z is an integer, z square will also be an integer. Okay, that is the only inference that you need to make. Okay. Now I've already got the range. So once I've got the range, all I need to do is include 0 and 1. That's it, nothing else. So the answer in this case would have been option C. But I see a few of you, in fact 20% of you marking the answer as B. Why is the case? Why did you do that? Why did you end up marking option B? So you just did you just include 0 or you forgot? Okay. Yes, 0 is an integer. Please, if you weren't aware of it, please jot it down. 0 is an integer. Okay. Okay, somebody is asking why not -1. So are we trying to find out the range of z or z square? Whose range are we trying to find out? Look at the question once again, please. We are trying to find out z square. Now tell me, can z square be -1? Can z square be -1? It cannot be, right? That is why the only possible cases would be 0 or 1, nothing else. I hope that answers your query. With this, guys, we have come to the end of the first 4 questions, which were between 600 to 700 level, where you saw the basic application of the concepts. As you can see, whatever kind of questions that I have discussed was simply based on basic wavy line methods, nothing else. The only thing that you need to take care of is know how to change the signs. You should know that perfect square are always non-negative integers which are greater than or equal to 0. We also learned how to use wavy line method, those of you who weren't aware of it. And we solved a question where you need to learn how to simplify an equation if you still don't know to do that. At some of the places you could not apply the constraints, and because of which you ended up marking the wrong answer. So that is another important learning and takeaway that you need to have, that how to ensure that you apply the constraints or jot down the constraint in the pen paper so that you don't forget it. Okay. And you most of the times you forget the constraint is because you don't read the question properly. You just see the equation, you solve it. So please don't do that. Now the questions that I'm going to discuss are all 700 plus level questions. Okay. Let's start with this one. And since these are slightly difficult, I'll give you about 2.5 minutes to solve it. Okay, I have about a very few responses, so I'm giving another minute to solve this. So it's not that difficult to solve. Just bring the variables one side, keep the sign same, and then solve it. Okay, another 10 seconds. I've already given you about 3.5 minutes. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, so let me broadcast the result. About 46% of you have marked option E, which is the correct answer, and I have an almost, okay, I have a majority here, somebody about second highest. 20% of you think the answer should be C. Let's understand where you faltered. I can understand people who have marked A, but not sure why you ended up marking B, C, or D. So in this case, see, I have been given two inequalities, and I have been given there are also constraints out here that x and y are positive integers. So I need to keep this in mind. Another thing while reading the question is that which you need to take care of is that you're looking for the positive difference, which means is that when you subtract x and y, the result should be positive. So the greater value, you need to do greater value minus a smaller value. Okay, so those of you who marked the answer A, you missed this part. So this is the first constraint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 3 simple steps to solve the question. First of all, I'm going to, as I told you, that I'm going to bring everything on one side and keep the inequality sign same, because it is easier to solve then. So I'm writing x plus 2y greater than 20 like this. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the second equation, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring all the variables, all the constants on one side and write it in this form. Okay, so I've taken minus 3x this side, minus 30 the other side, and I've written it like this. So do you have any doubt still here? And there shouldn't be any. Kindly mark yes if this is perfectly clear, that there are no doubts here. If this is clear, please mark yes. Okay, so I'm just manipulating the inequalities, nothing else. I'm just changing the signs. I'm bringing I'm just not changing the sign. I'm bringing all the x and y's and the numbers on the left hand side and keeping the sign as greater than or equal to 0. The reason I'm doing this is now it's very easy for me to compare and see, okay, I need to subtract, I need to subtract or add so that I can get the values of x and y. Now what I can do is, since I already have a minus 3x, I can multiply the first inequality by 3 to get 3x plus 6y minus 6t is greater than 0. This is something which I got from the first equation. Okay, and I already have this equation with me, which I'm writing it here. If you'll notice, I've bought this inequality and written it here. Okay, so this inequality I'm getting by multiplying by 3, and this is what I got from here. Now I can simply add them, which will because of which this will get cancelled out, plus 3x minus 6 will cancel, and I will get 5y minus 30 is greater than 0 divided by 5, and finally get y is greater than 6. Guys, is this clear? If this is clear, then only will I move on to the next part. Kindly mark yes if this is clear. Okay, great. Now once I have y is greater than 6, I need to find out the value of x. Now an easy way to do it is to put the value to simply take this. So I'm looking at equation 5. Okay, y minus 6 is greater than 0. And I have this equation here, minus 3x minus y plus 30 is greater than 0. Now why am I taking these two equations? The reason is simple. I have a minus y here, I have a plus y here. So minus y plus y will get cancelled out, plus 30 and minus 6 will give me plus 24, and I'll have minus 3x as it is. So when I solve 5 and 2, when I add them up, I get minus 3x plus 24 is greater than 0, or minus 6 is greater than minus 8. Multiply both sides by minus 1, change the sign to get x is less than 8. Okay, so I hope there are no doubts here also. Now once you get both of these inequalities, this is where a few of you might falter and end up marking the wrong answer. Okay, especially those of you who ended up marking option B. So those of you marked A, I'm sure now you understand why you made the mistake of not seeing positive difference. But those of you ended up marking B, I'll tell you why you did so. Now, I need the minimum possible value of x. Minimum possible. Let me reopen since I've been speaking for so long. Let me ask you a question. What is the minimum possible value of x? X is less than 8. I need the minimum possible value of x. What will that be? 1. That's great. See, those of you are saying minus infinity, you still missed the constraint that they are positive integers. Please keep this in mind. You need to answer the query using the constraint. Pulkit, I told you at the starting only because I know people make these mistakes. Positive integers start from 1. Didn't I tell you positive integers start from 1? Negative integers start from minus 1. It is only when I talk about non-negative and non-positive integers will start from 0, will include 0. Okay, so I'm reiterating these points once again. So it's very clear that x should be 1. But y is a place where a lot of you might end up making mistake. Now I'm saying y is greater than 6. Okay, and I need the minimum value of y. The minimum value of y obviously would be 7. You cannot go beyond that. You cannot take 8 or 9 or 10 because I'm looking for the next highest value, which is an integer. Now once I have the minimum value, once I have the maximum value, I need to find out the positive difference, which will be 6. So those of you ended up marking 0, what you did was instead of taking 1, you took x is 7. You just took the next highest, the highest value of x, which is possible. So if I would have asked maximum possible value of x, then you would have taken x as 7. Okay. Please mark yes, guys, if this is clear. Let me clear the poll once. Clear answer. Please mark yes if this is clear. Okay. So once again, please keep this in mind that you need to whenever you have two inequalities, bring them to a standard form and then solve them. It's very easy to solve. And please, when I'm saying positive difference, it means larger minus smaller number. And don't forget the constraints. If you forget the constraints, you'll end up making a mistake once again. Okay, with this, let's come to the next question. another 1 minute, guys. I have very few responses, so let me give you a hint. If you are not comfortable with 1 by r square or 1 by s square, you may assume it to be something and then solve the question. In the same way, when I solved absolute equality question, where I had a mod of x plus 3 and I took x plus 3 as z. If you want, you can take 1 by r square as something, 1 by s square as something, solve it, get a range, and then come up with the answer. Another 10 seconds. Keep this in mind that in GMAT, if you cannot solve a question in say under 2 minutes, okay, this is only for GMAT, okay, not here, but if you come across a scenario where you're not being able to solve a question after a minute or and a half or 2 also, you should either leave that question or mark something and move on. And you need to get used to this habit of doing this. Since we are doing a webinar where you, it's okay if you take more than 2 minutes to solve a question, even 2.5 minutes, but in the actual exam, don't do that. If you're not sure how to solve it, if you have no clue how to solve it, it's always best to take an educated guess or just mark something and move to the next question. Okay, with this I'm ending the poll, guys. I'm not getting a lot of responses and most of the responses are very scattered. So let me know your thoughts. Was this a difficult question? How did you find this question? So I have about 40% of you think the answer should be E and almost equal split between B, C, D. And only 3 of you think the answer should be A, which is the correct answer. So congrats 3 of you who marked option A. Now let me discuss this and then let me know if you still think it's difficult. So I have 2 variables, R and S, and I've been given 2 expressions, 2 inequalities, which look very scary. Now when you have situations like this, when the variables are in the denominator, what you can do is you can simply just a sec. You can simply substitute 1 by r square, 1 by s square with x or y or a or b or p or q, whatever you want, because you are comfortable solving inequalities or even inequality when the variables are in the numerator, right? So this is one way to do it. Just simply substitute it with x and y. Obviously you need to keep in mind there are no constraint on R and S, that is one thing, and I'm looking for an overlap zone between R and S. So what basically that means is you need to find out the range of R, you need to find out the range of S and see what is the common part for both of them, where both R and S satisfy. Okay, so once I substitute this, I'll get my equation something like this: x minus y is greater than minus 9, and I'm bringing minus 9 this side, and the second equation would be 2x minus y is less than 7, and once again I brought everything to one side just to ensure that both of them are greater than sign, and then it becomes easy to solve. So Is this till this part, is it clear, guys? Kindly mark yes if it is, so that I can move to the next slide. So the idea of this question is to understand that whenever you have situation like this, substitute and then solve the question. Okay, great. Now what I'm going to do is, once I have this equation, I'm going to use the same logic that I used in the previous question. I'll look at this and I'll say, okay, I have a plus y minus y. What I can do is I can simply add equation inequality 1 and 2, because this will get cancelled out, and plus x and minus 2x would give me minus x, and if I add this up I'll get 16, which basically gives me x is less than 16. Okay, I hope there are no doubts here, because this was pretty straightforward. Now once I have this, once I have the value of x, I need to find y. Now look at these two equations, x minus y plus 9, and look at this equation, minus x plus 16. So since I need to eliminate x, I can take these two equations 1 and 3 and add them up. If I add up, minus x plus x will get cancelled out. I'll be left with minus y plus 25 is greater than 0, or y is less than 25. So far so good. Please mark yes if this is clear. Okay, good. Now once I have this, obviously I'm not looking for x and y, I'm looking for r and s. So I'll substitute again back the value of x as 1 by r square, and I'll write it like this. Okay, or so simply take, you don't need to do this step, you can simply take it Guys, am I audible now? Please mark yes if I'm audible. Really apologies for the inconvenience. I don't know, it usually doesn't happen this way. Okay. So please let me know if this part is clear. If you understood this thing, what I'm doing is I need the value of r, right? Since I need the value of r, that is why I am taking r square this side and bringing 16 down, and then taking 1 by 16 this way. Okay. Now I can simply use the formula of now this is r square, and 1 by 16 I hope you know is 1 by 4 square. So I can simply use the formula of a square minus b square to get r minus 1 by 4 into r plus 1 by 4 is greater than 0. Is there any doubts here? I can use the wavy line method to find out the range of r. Similarly for s, I can do the same thing. I'll substitute 1 by s square is less than 25, do the same step, bring 25 here, take s square there, and once again 1 by 25 is 5 square, so I can write it like this. Please mark yes if both these steps are clear. Please mark yes if this is clear. So if you notice here, the only thing that is difficult is or I would say a little complicated, is the number of manipulations that we need to do, simplification that we need to do. So the first thing that we did was substitute the value. with x and y. Once we substituted it, we had to solve the inequalities to get x and y, then again replace back the value and find out the ranges. So there are a number of steps involved, because of which it becomes difficult to solve. Otherwise, it's not that tough to solve. Now, once I have r minus 1 by 4 into r plus 1 by 4 is greater than 0, can anyone tell me what will be the range of r? What will be the range of r? R minus 1 by 4 into r plus 1 by 4 is greater than 0. So what is the range of r? I've opened the short answer poll. You can draw a wavy line. You can use a wavy line to draw this if you want to. Okay, a few more responses because I have 3 different responses. Will it only be 0.25 to infinity and nothing else? Okay, I have some good, yes, nice. Now I have some good responses. See, think about it. If I draw a wavy line, I'll get points as 1 by 4 and minus 1 by 4. I'm looking for greater than 0, and greater than 0 is only, if you draw the wavy line, you'll see greater than 0 is possible only when the value is 1 or greater than 1 by 4, or it is less than 1 by 4. So 1 by 4 till infinity, minus 1 by 4 till infinity. So those of you who got this correct, absolutely good. Same will happen for s minus 1 by 5, s plus 1 by 5 greater than 0. In this case also, I'll get 1 by 5 to infinity minus 1 by 5 till infinity. Now which value is greater, 1 by 4 or 1 by 5? And you can see it in the graph, but I want you to say it. 1 by 4 is greater or 1 by 5? 1 by 4. Please keep this in mind. The 5 is in the denominator, so 1 by 5 is 0.2 and 1 by 4 is 0.25. Now since I'm looking at the overlap region, the region where both these values will satisfy will start. So look at, visualize it in this way, that this for s is starting from 1 by 5 and moving till infinity. Okay, s is starting from 1 by 4 and it is moving till infinity. So the common part, at least on the right hand side, is starting from 1 by 4 only. Okay, you can do the same visualization here, and you'll notice that the common part is starting from here. Is this clear, guys? If you have any doubts, please ask. Since the common part is starting from these two parts, that is why the answer in this case would be option A. Okay? So please keep this in mind. Again, once I'm reiterating that whenever you're solving questions like this, you said there will be certain scenarios where you will have to convert the inequalities into standard form or substitute values. Why are we taking, okay, somebody's asking why are we taking negative infinity? Because think about it, because the value of s, there are no constraint on s. We haven't been told that they are positive or negative or anything. That means when I plot this, I'll get all the values from minus 1 by 5 to minus infinity, plus 1 by 5 to plus infinity, plus 1 by 4 to plus infinity, minus 1 by 4 to minus infinity. That is why the overlap region will also include plus infinity and minus infinity. Okay? That's what I'm saying. So as a learning a takeaway, you need to please focus on the constraints. Make sure that whenever you have scenarios like this, you substitute by you take certain variables which will help you solve the question easily and correctly. Okay. Now I'm going to solve DS questions. We're going to start with 3 DS questions, and this is the first one. Okay guys, another 10 seconds, then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. If anyone want to put in your response, please do it quickly. Okay. Once again, I have a fairly mixed response. About 30% of you think the answer could be either C or E. 23% of you think the answer is A, which I think is the correct answer if I remember properly. So let me discuss it, and I'm going to ask you a few questions along the way to understand where you faltered. So I'm asked, is Z positive? Okay, and I've been given certain constraints. If you look at the question again, the question is Z is an integer, okay, that has been given to me. So I know Z is an integer and mod of Z is less than 6. So I know Z is an integer and I have Z is less than, mod of Z is less than 6. So tell me, if mod of Z is less than 6, what is the range of Z? We discussed this in the warm-up question, so all of you should be able to solve this. Mod of Z is less than 6, that means it is between -6 to +6. Absolutely good. Now since it's an integer, if I want, I can write down all the values. Okay, so obviously the values will be -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those of you are saying -5 to +5, please make sure say -5 to +5 inclusive. Okay, so this is absolutely clear to all of you, which is good. Now I know this, and I just need to find out whether Z is exclusively positive or not. So it's a yes no type of question. Now the first statement is mod of Z minus 2 is greater than 0. Now while I was discussing mod of question, one of you asked me what should I do when there's a greater than sign, right? In case of mod. This is one of the questions where I'm going to show you what needs to be done. Now the first question is, can we write mod of Z greater than 3 as shown? Can I do this? Yes, no. Okay, let me bring up a poll. That's better than asking it here, but majority of you are saying no. I have, okay, almost an equal split, I think. See, this is only valid when you have a less than sign. Please keep this in mind. This is not correct when you have a greater than sign. If you have a less than sign, you can blindly write it like this. You don't need to worry about it. But for a greater than equal to sign, you need to think in a slightly different way. So once again, to make you understand, I'm taking Z minus 2 as T, and I'm writing it as mod T is greater than 3. Now, once again, think like this. Think in this way that I can draw a number line, and since there's nothing inside it, I'll start from the origin, and the distance is 3. Okay, so I'll start from the origin and move till 3, both sides. Okay, but I'm looking for values which are greater than 3. That means I'm looking beyond 3, because once I put values like 4, 5, 6 and so on, I'll get values which are positive and greater than 3. Once I move -4, -5, -6, so on, once I put this in the mod value, I'll get values which are greater than 3. Okay, between -3 to +3, you'll have values where mod of T is less than 3. So I hope this is perfectly clear. So now I know these are the two ranges. So I can say since T is greater than 3, this means T is Z minus 2, so I'm putting this value back here. And in the same way, this is also valid, so I'm putting Z minus 2 back here. And from this I can come up with conclusion that Z is greater than 5 or Z is less than -1. Now tell me, if Z is greater than 5, do we have any positive values? If Z is greater than 5, remember your constraint, Z is an integer and it is between -5 to +5 inclusive. No, right? You cannot get any value which is Z is greater than 5. We just saw it in the previous slide. I'm just going back very quickly because it is not here. We saw the values are from 5 to -5 to 5. So that is why this value is not possible. Okay. As far as the second part is concerned, z is minus 1. Now if z is minus 1, is this part possible, z minus 1? Can we get values which, what kind of values will we get when we look at this equation, z is minus 1? What kind of values will they be, positive or negative? All will be negative, right? Minus 2 to minus 5. Between minus 2 to minus 5, all the values are negative, right? And we are not getting anything from here. So we can confidently say that if z is an integer and z satisfies mod of z is less than 6, that is a condition given to me, and this is the statement, using all these information, I can say the value of z can be either minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, minus 5, and all these values are negative. Hence, we can conclude that z is not positive, z is negative. As I told you, this is a yes and no question. So if I'm being asked is z positive, I simply need to tell yes it is positive or no it is positive. And from this I can say that no, z is not positive. And that is why statement 1 is sufficient to answer the question. Is this clear, guys? Kindly mark here. Sometimes people make this mistake in data sufficiency question. When they are given as z positive, they try and forcefully try and prove that it is positive. If they are not being able to prove it, if they get otherwise, they think the answer is not, we are not getting the answer. That is not the case. If you can answer in terms of yes and no, that is enough. Only and only when you are unsure about the positive or negative nature of z, then only will you say that the statement is not sufficient, which is like statement 2. In statement 2, mod of z is 2, which means that can be plus 2 or minus 2. In this case, I do not know exactly what is the value of z, whether it's positive or negative. Since I do not know the exact nature, positive, negative nature of z, that is why statement 2 is not sufficient, statement 1 is, and hence the answer is option A. So now guys, tell me, is this clear? Please mark yes if it is. If you still have any doubts, please ask in the Q&A pod. I will request you to do so. Since we are running out of time, let me move on really quickly to the next question. It's okay if you made a silly mistake. Make sure that you keep a note of it. Keep all the inferences at one place. If you do that, you'll stop making these kind of mistakes. Believe me. Another 10 seconds, everyone. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. I have a really interesting result. Let me broadcast it. Okay. So I'll keep the result in front of you and I'll keep on asking questions. I'm sure you'll understand where most of you have faltered. So just to tell you, more than 90% of you got the answer incorrect. Okay, let's discuss this and see where you faltered. So I need to find out, is A less than B, and I have been and there nothing else given to me. As you can see, I have no constraints, nothing at all. So I'll simply jump on into the statements. Now when I'm given that mod of A minus B is equal to B minus A, what can I conclude about B minus A? What can I conclude about B minus A? Can you type in your response? Is positive, is equal, is positive. Okay. Tell me one thing, can't B minus A be 0? Can't B minus A be 0? Yes, so is it right when you say it's positive? When you're saying B minus A will always be positive, are you correct? Or should you say B minus A will be non-negative? Please keep this in mind. This is where most of you would have faltered, those of you especially marked option A or option D. Whenever you have a situation like this, mod of x equal to y, then that means that y is either equal to, okay, so it has to, or positive, so it has to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, x can be anything, but since it's a mod value, I know it has to be positive or 0 if x is 0. So you need to make the same conclusion here, that b minus a will be greater than or equal to 0. So from here you'll get two scenarios, either a is equal to b or a is less than b. Okay, since you're getting two different scenarios, that is why statement 1 is not sufficient to answer the question. Now tell me guys, is this clear? So the mistake that you made, most of you made, was you simply thought b minus a will be positive, nothing else. Okay, I can see it's clear to most of you. Would request you to kindly mark yes or no so that it helps me understand. Okay, now here comes the next statement, which is again very tricky one, a tricky one. So I have a by b is less than 1. Can I use this to conclude that a is less than b? Where is my yes and no poll? Here it is. Just one sec, guys. Kindly mark yes if you think that this statement is sufficient. Those of you who are saying no, can you tell me why is this not sufficient? That's very good. That's very good. I can see that you have understood this part, that you do not know the positive or negative nature of A and B. This is very important for you to understand. So if B is greater than 0, there could be two cases, B is greater than 0 or B is less than 0. If B is greater than 0, then in that case you will be able to see that say that A is less than B. But if B is negative, and this is less than 1, then there is a possibility that A is greater than B. Okay, since we do not know the sign, we can only say it could be either greater than B or less than B, depending on the sign of B. I don't know that, hence statement 2 is not sufficient to answer the question. Okay, once I combine both these statements, from the statement 1 I know either A is equal to B or A is less than B. From the second statement I know either it will be greater than B or less than B. And once you combine both these statements, you need to look for a common answer, right? So in that case, you can say, okay, in both these cases, if I'm looking for a condition which satisfies both these statements, that is when A is less than B, hence combining both of them, you can say that this option C would be a correct answer. Okay, somebody is asking me to rediscuss statement 1. Can you please tell me what is the difficulty in statement 1? Did you understand that? So think about it in this way. Let me use a simple example which I had. I'll take a minute here. Look at this thing. Okay, this, and visualize and tell me, can x be 0? When x is 0, what is the value of y? When x is 0, what is the value of y? Y is 0, right? Okay. When x is minus 3, what is the value of y? Let me clear this. When x is minus 3, what is the value of y? When x is minus 3, what is the value of y, guys? It will be 3, right? When x is 3, what is the value of y? it will again be 3. So understand this, that the value of y can be positive, it will never be negative. That's for sure. But there is a scenario, there is a possibility that x can be 0 also. When x is 0, y will be 0. So whenever you see an equation like this and you haven't been told anything, then that basically means that y will be greater than or equal to 0. Now what you're trying to do is here, you're just simply taking the case where mod of a minus b is equal to b minus a or a minus b. Now when you take the second case, when you're saying a minus b is equal to a minus b, what do you exactly mean by that? You are not considering the case when a and b both of them can be equal. When a and b both of them are equal, then in that case a minus b will be 0 and b minus a will also be 0. I hope you understand why, from where are we getting this. Yes, so those of you got lost at a minus b is equal to a minus b, you could not think from this perspective that a and b both of them may be equal. And since they can be equal and there's a scenario when a could be less than b, that is why, since we are getting two different scenarios, that is why statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay. With this, guys, let me come to the last question. If you have still any queries, please post it in the Q&A pod. Ashutosh will respond to it. Let me come to the last question. Okay, and you have about 2 minutes to solve this. Another 10 seconds, then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. So I have once again a mixed response. Most of you think the answer should be E. Let me broadcast the result. Oh, okay. And I have a few C and A's also. So let me very quickly discuss this. So I need to find out if Z is greater than 2, and I have been given any constraint, no other information, so I can simply jump down to each and every statement. So first statement is mod of Z minus 2 whole square is greater than 4. Now tell me, is there any use of the mod here, or is it redundant? Mod of Z minus 2 whole square. Isn't Z minus 2 whole square already positive, right? So there is no use. So kindly ignore this 2. This 2 basically is to the power 2. A square is always, as you know, we discussed now that it is either 0 or positive. So the modular sign does not impact anything. We can simply say Z minus 2 is whole square is greater than 4. Okay. So once I have this, I can simply say Z minus 2 whole square minus 2 square is greater than 0. I can bring the 4 to the other side and write it as 2 square, and then I can use the formula of A plus B into A square minus B square is equal to A plus B into A minus B, and write it like this. So if any of you are getting confused, please keep this in mind that this 2 is whole square. Okay, there's a typo here. This is whole square, this is whole square. Okay, this is 2 square, Z minus 2 square. So once I use A square minus B square, I'll get Z minus 4 into Z is greater than 0, which gives me either Z is less than 0 or Z is greater than 4. So there's a possibility that Z could be greater than 2, but there's also a possibility that Z is negative. Tell me guys, is this clear? Kindly mark yes if this is clear. So the first thing which I did was I inferred that the modular sign is playing no role here. Okay. Second thing what I did was I used A square minus B square formula by bringing 4 this side to write it as 2 square. So I'm just bringing 4 this side to write it as 2 square and using A square minus B square formula to find the range of Z. Once I have this, I'm just using wavy line method to come up with the range of Z. And in this I can see there are 2 ranges. In one range I can get Z is greater than 2. In one case it is negative. Okay. Yes, you can solve it in this way also. There are a number of ways of solving it. I'm using the wavy line. That's just that I'm comfortable with it. You can use 2 cases to solve it. Now in this case I've been given that mod of 8x minus 4k is equal to Z. So what can I infer from this? Anyone? What can I infer about Z from this equation? We just discussed it. Absolutely good. Now you can see that you're understanding this. So from this, all we can conclude is that Z is greater than or equal to 0. Since a modulus sign, Z could be greater than 0 or Z would be equal to 0, but I don't know which is the case. Hence, statement 2 is also not sufficient. Finally, when we combine both these statements, I got this from statement 1 and this from statement 2. And from this, the common part that we can take is that it's greater than 4, which will help me answer my query. And hence, the correct answer in this case is option C. So those of you who ended up marking A, B, D, you basically fell for the trap, or you still could not decipher. So a lot of you ended up marking A as the answer because of this fact, because you couldn't maybe decipher this part, A square minus B square, or the modulus part. Though a good 28% of you got the correct answer. So as you can see, since you have come to the end of this session, just give me 1 sec. I'll share the PDF with you and I'll talk a bit more about. Just 1 sec. Let me bring up the PDF so that you can look at this in your spare time. Okay, let me hide this. So guys, this is the session PDF. Just 1 sec, let me make this proper. I would request you to kindly rate this session. If you like the session, please rate it. Also, we always love to get some feedback from you, so please let us know how you like this session. I've brought this here. Please type in your response. Let me know what is the best part of the session. What did you like? What did you learn? Okay. In the meantime, let me tell you just one thing before ending, that please understand that GMAT Quant can be mastered. Whatever I have discussed so far were just the basics, guys. And I was just using the basic concept to solve almost all the questions. It is only that you need to develop a methodical way to solve the questions. You need to learn how to understand the constraints, how to read the question properly, how to when and where to apply each and every concept. Once you get used to this, you will definitely be able to do well in GMAT. I would like to share a few success stories. If you haven't gone through them, please do so. This is one story of Krish, who who believed that he was very good in quant,